So this little boy just got shot 3 times on the south side of Chicago. He was just at the wrong place at the wrong time with some of his friends he had no business kicking it with. So since he was with his friends that day, their enemies tried to take him out. But this little boy in the hospital bed crying because he don't got nobody to come to the hospital for him. His father just passed away 2 years ago to gun violence. And his mother is strung out on some hardcore stuff. He's about to make 17 in a couple of months. He got a little sister that just made 11. Nobody in their family is trying to help these kids. So the whole time he was in the hospital, he tried to call his uncle. So the little boy calls his uncle to try to convince him to let him and his sister move in because he don't want to get shot no more and he want to make sure his little sister's going to be safe. The uncle seemed like he just don't want nothing to do with this little boy and his sister. So he said, man, y'all got to figure it out. You can't come here though. So the little boy begging and pleading and say, Unc, I just got shot and I'm in the hospital. The uncle say, well, you said what? You just got shot and you want to come to my house? Man, you got me messed up, and hung the phone up on his nephew. Now the little boy crying, bawling his eyes out. He feel like he don't got nobody. So when the nurses and doctors come in and say, hey, is your mom or your father coming in? He says, I don't have a mother or father. One of the nurses says, what do you mean by that? He said, my mother and my father passed away. He was so embarrassed of what his mother was going through that he didn't want nobody to know that he had a mother. So they said, oh my gosh, do you have any family members that will come and check on you, take you home and stuff like that? He wanted to say his uncle, but he couldn't. So he started crying and said, no, I don't have nobody. So the nurse felt so bad for him. She puts her hands on her face, takes a deep breath and wipe her face. She puts her hand on his hand and says, honey, are you serious right now? You can tell this little boy is trying to hold his tears back because he feel like he's trying to be a man. So since he didn't want to start weeping, he just nodded his head yes. Tears rolling down his face, he just can't hold in the emotion. The nurse grabs his hand really tight and says, hey, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you're going to get out of this situation. So the little boy says, can you help my sister too? The nurse jumps back, puts her hand on her chest and says, wait, how old is your sister? He says she just made 11. The nurse's mouth dropped. She puts her hands over her mouth and said, oh my gosh, where's your sister right now? He says, I pray she's at home. I know she probably by herself, but once I got shot, y'all rushed me to the hospital. The nurse's heart is beating because she is in disbelief of what this young man is going through. She almost want to cry, but she takes a deep breath and exhales. Says, young man, please give me your address. He wants to give up the address, but he's embarrassed that his mom might be in the house. He looks at her and says, I'm sorry, but I can't give you the address right now. With a confused face, she says, why not? He couldn't hold his emotions in no more, and he just started weeping and crying and saying, I just don't want nothing to happen to my sister. I feel like y'all gonna take her from me, and she all I got. Please, please don't take my sister away from me. Please don't take my sister away from me. This woman hugs the young man and starts crying herself. Now she has an emotional attachment to this young man, and she's gonna do everything in her power to make sure that that young man and that little girl get saved. Now the young woman is feeling bad for him, but she wants to do as much digging as she possibly can to save his sister. So now she's thinking to herself, once she gets out of here, she's going to go get on a computer, figure out his address and everything like that. And when she gets off of work, go see if the little sister is at home. She grabbed the young man some Kleenex and says, listen, I'm going to get off work in a little bit. Did you want anything back? So he asked for a couple snacks and some White Castles. She laughs and jokes, said, oh, White Castles, that's a good choice. Then he says, yeah, my dad used to take me and my sister to eat White Castles a lot. Now, she didn't like White Castles, but she's trying to make this young man feel better. So she says, I love White Castles, and your father has some good taste. The young man is smiling because he got a compliment about his father. So she tells him, when I get off work, I'll make sure I go get them snacks for you and some White Castles and bring it back to you. And then tomorrow, if you need anything, let me know. So he said, thank you so much. And she walked out and she started doing her research. She found out this young man's address and she wrote it down, and she said she's going to this place when she gets off work. But She did not know what she was finna get herself into. So once she got off work, she didn't go right away to get the White Castles and the snacks. She went over to the house and knocked on the door. She heard some type of movement, but nobody came to the door. Now she's looking around because she is very scared. Her heart is beating really fast. She's in a bad area of Chicago. Now, even though she's scared, she wants to save this little girl. She is not allowing fear to take over. So when she heard the movement, she knocked really fast again. Next thing you know, the door cracks. When she looks in the house, it's pitch black. So once the door opens, she takes 2 steps back, grabs her chest and says, "Hello?" The door cracks a little bit more. Her heart is beating more faster because she don't know what she just got herself into. Now it's an awkward silence and she knows somebody's behind the door, but they're not saying nothing and she can't see them. So she's looking around to see if she needs to run to her car at this moment. And before she tries to jet out, she says again, "Hello, is anybody there?" And next thing you know, all you hear is silence. And then